was the summer of 2014, and for my son's bar mitzvah present, just like many Jewish parents, we wanted him to bond with the Holy Land. Oh, it worked perhaps too well. My husband had stayed back at the hotel, and our friends, my son and I, had just stopped in a pharmacy.
Run to the bomb shelter, sweetie, please hurry. I didn't hear the sirens at first, but the Israelis did. They're used to hearing these things. We ran to the back of the storeroom. It was a 12-foot by 24-foot windowless bomb shelter. My heart's pounding. Boom! Boom! I hear and feel the percussion of the exploding bombs. I'm trying not to get sick. I look at my 13-year-old son and I think I'll never forgive myself if something happens to him.
That's an excerpt from a speech I gave to the Orange County Jewish Bar Association. It was the first, but not the last time we had to run to a bomb shelter. Our adventure and my transformation is also the subject of my book, Blasted from Complacency, A Journey from Terror to Transformation in Israel. There is no chapter in a parenting book on what to do when a war starts and you're on a family vacation. Think touring extraordinary and sacred sites mixed with cowering in bomb shelters. I'm still trying to get over the Jewish guilt of taking my son to war for his bar mitzvah present. The impact of being human targets helped me understand the plight of Israelis living like this, and it also made me want to work on peace. How Israel is often described on the news is not what I'd seen with my own eyes. And I felt Palestinian parents also preferred their children playing safely in their backyards. The missiles exploded just near enough to blow apart my world as I knew it, forever changing me. And you'd never recognize my life today with what it was like then. I believe I found my life's purpose. Hello, I'm Penny ST, and I'm the host of Peace with Penny. In today's episode of Peace with Penny, we have the pleasure of speaking with Mario Schejtman, the founder of Challenge, an Israeli NGO formed in 2010 to promote conflict transformation within both the Israeli and Palestinian arenas. Conflict transformation is an innovative approach that helps to identify the different layers in the dynamic of a conflict and provides practical tools to reduce the suffering through creativity, empathy, and nonviolence. Mario has extensive experience in managing organizations and projects in civil society and in academia. He holds a master's degree in political science from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem and has been trained in a variety of methods, combining different approaches and perspectives in his work. He often takes well-studied theories and puts them into action in his projects. Welcome, Mario.
Thank you for having me.
Mario, how would you describe Challenge?
Challenge is a dream, and a privilege. It's an organization working to try to adding our little effort to improve the world and to improve the reality that we live in, looking at that reality from a complex perspective, looking at the cultural, the structural levels, not only about what is happening around us.
Why did you found Challenge?
Well, I founded the Challenge because I wanted to do something significant. I wanted to do something that really has the possibility of creating an impact and not doing just more of the same.
Mm-hmm.
And the Challenge started after a big international project, which I coordinated. I was part of the coordinating team, and developed a conflict transformation methodology to work in conflict, a methodology that we called KUMI, or Social Transformation in Conflict. The KUMI method.
So why'd you name it Challenge? Because it's such a challenge, or
yeah, because the approach of conflict transformation looks at conflict not as something that is bad or that is something that we need to avoid.
Mm-hmm.
We look at conflict as an inherent part of our life at all levels, from
Mm-hmm.
little children discussing who will control the remote control for the TV,
Yeah.
up to the international wars and everything that is in between at the family, social, national levels. And we look at conflicts not as something that is bad, but something that if we know how to deal with,
Mm-hmm.
how to behave in a conflict situation, it can be a source of creativity, a source of growth. So we want to look at the conflict as a challenge, as something that
Mm-hmm.
will allow us to create new opportunities, and not something that we need to run away from.
Awesome. Awesome. So what's Challenge's vision? What would you like to see happen?
Yeah. Well, our vision is to create and support the creation of deep relationships between people from different identities and different backgrounds in a way that promotes dialogue and listening, and promotes integrity, and promotes equality, and allows people to celebrate their differences and not feel
Mm-hmm.
threatened by them. So and we know that conflict will happen, frictions will
Right.
happen. So we want to help everyone to learn the skills and to get the understanding on how to deal with that situation when it appears.
What specifically are you working on in Israel, Palestine?
Right now we have three main strategic directions, and we are in a process, in a period of growth that I'm very happy about. And at this moment we have three main strategic directions, and within each we have different programs. The first one is promoting the shared society paradigm,
Mm-hmm.
meaning bringing people from different identity groups and get to know each other and reduce their fear and stereotypes and celebrate the differences. So we have programs working on the ground uh, between Israeli Jews and Palestinians, or between religious and secular, and so on. We have a second direction that is making all these tools and skills and theories available to as many people as possible. And so we provide training workshops and courses, and bring this knowledge that we gathered from different sources to open it, so we don't keep it just for ourselves. The more people know about it, the better.
Mm-hmm.
And the third strategic direction is to promote creative thinking about conflicts, and try to think and develop ideas or formulas that are win-win, or both and, that they go deeper. They don't deal with the symptoms, but with the underlying reasons of the conflict, and try to define new ways of looking and review the assumptions, and try to find new ways of defining the potential solutions. The main program that we have in that direction is called the Federal Forum, and
Mm-hmm.
it's a program in which we brought together activists and scholars that are working on trying to perhaps square the circle, to assuming that we are in a kind of a one-state reality right now, and the two-state solution seems to be getting away farther and farther every day. So we ask ourselves whether through a federal system of government, like in the United States or in Belgium or Switzerland or many other countries around the world, we can create a model that allows both a system that is democratic and egalitarian, and at the same time allows for both nations to fulfill the rights of self-determination and and to uh, and to be connected to the whole land, which for
Wow.
both nations is their historical, cultural, religious, national homeland.
Boy, you take on complex issues to try to help with.
Yeah,
Do you
I love
use
complexity. Mm.
do you use interfaith communities in your work at all?
Yes, yes, we work also with interfaith communities as well.
How
Yes.
so?
Well, we first of all we try to combine and bring together people from different faiths and different identities and into the joint projects, into in the programs that we work, and we give a special place to the whole issue of identity. Identity is a central aspect of everything that we do, and we are very respectful of that. We don't want to promote any kind of anyone feeling that he needs to relinquish or assimilate or renounce to their identity.
Hmm.
And also we have some ideas and some programs that are focused specifically on interfaith dialogue.
Terrific. You worked on so many different projects, and conflict transformation is an important concept that you've already mentioned. So, why don't we discuss exactly what that means and take a look at some of your projects? So, let me share my screen. What is this picture of conflict transformation showing us here?
This group is the first group that we presented with a course on conflict introduction to conflict transformation. We shared with them the theories and main tools on how to understand conflict, how to analyze conflict, and how to behave once we have analyzed it. And this group was composed by a combination of practitioners and scholars. So it was a very high level group. We had very good discussions.
Why were these particular participants chosen to attend this first series of classes?
Well, the combination of activists and scholars, so people that can relate to both aspects of what we want to do, to work on the ground to change reality, but based on a well-developed theoretical background. So we usually say for that challenge is an organization that is vision-led, theory-driven, and action-oriented. So we try to combine all aspects.
So conflict transformation was taught by Johann Gultung and John Paul Lederach. I guess that's how to pronounce it. Can you please describe the philosophy behind it?
Yeah, they were the kind of the founding fathers of this approach, and they understood that the main approaches to how to understand conflict until that point, until a few decades ago, was either the realist approach, the conflict management approach, that says conflict is is everywhere, and we cannot leave conflict. And in order to manage it, we need to check the balance of power, and we need to make sure that we are the most powerful side in the conflict. But we will most probably we will always be in a conflict. And the second approach, kind of a reaction to it, is the conflict resolution approach that says we don't want to be in a conflict. We need to find a compromise, even if it's difficult to swallow, even if it's hurtful for the parties in the conflict. But once we get out of the conflict, then we start building a new reality. And conflict transformation is somewhere in the middle, and says we are part of conflicts. Conflicts are part of our life all the time. But we can find good solutions, or at least good formulas that will allow us to, in the best scenario, to reach win-win solutions that provide for the needs of all the parties. Or at least, if we cannot find that ideal outcome, we can reduce the suffering. We can reduce by reducing the use of violence, and helping the parties to redefine their goals and their tactics. We can, even if the conflict is not solved, but at least it is manageable in a better way, in a less hurtful way.
So, what are some examples of the underlying causes of the violence in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict?
We understood that after a research project that we did at the beginning of our work as challenge, we understood that there are two main reasons why the conflict is going on and it's not being solved, and why all the proposals for territorial compromise, or also known as a two-state solution, that are with us since 1936 with the Peel Commission, and until now, this has become almost the main paradigm of how to solve this. And we couldn't implement those proposals. So we asked ourselves, what is missing? What's the problem there? And we understood that there were two assumptions, two premises that needed to be revised. One is what I already mentioned, that for both nations, the connection is to the whole land, and the connection is deep, and we see the whole land as our ancestral, cultural, religious, national, historical homeland. So looking at the conflict as just a real estate issue, just as a territorial compromise that is kind of, for some groups, from at least, it is too much of a compromise to expect. It's like saying, okay, let's amputate part of your body, and so that's,
no one's volunteering for that, eh?
Exactly. So that brings very important groups on both sides to reject this idea and start behaving as what was called in the Oslo process veto groups, and from there the arriving to violence is very, very easy. So that's one main issue that we understood that was preventing a solution. The second, which is no less important, is the fact that for both nations, for both Jews and Palestinians, there's too many sectors, big sectors, that they don't recognize the national rights and the national aspect of the other. So they don't. Many Palestinians don't recognize Jewish national rights, and many Jews don't recognize Palestinians. So this leads not only for the capacity to not just to talk, but to really understand each other, but also it leads to an attitude of a zero-sum dynamic that I want to have everything, and I'm not ready to give up anything, because everything that I give up is a loss in something that is very important for me. So
And within each of the groups, aren't there so many factions that also have competing ideas of what's gonna work or not work, or they don't want to work, that complicates the whole situation?
absolutely. We are not talking. We understand that we usually see the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, or most conflict, as mainly between two big groups, two sides.
Right.
But in reality, it's not so.
It's a
There are
mess.
so many subgroups and sub attitudes and sub positions within both. So I prefer to define it that it's not between Israelis on one side and Palestinians on the other. But it's a conflict between people that have an hegemonic or have a totalist view of the conflict, that they want to reach a total victory over the other, and people that are willing to find a solution that shares or that creates a common possibility of common living together, whether it's in one state, in two states, or in any kind of other formula. It's less important, but people that are really willing to recognize each other as equals and as having the same rights and needs.
Okay, let's take a look at something else. You were here at Together for Jerusalem in 2018. What was that project?
That was a project that we brought together environmental activists from Israelis from West Jerusalem and Palestinians from East Jerusalem, and to think together about how to improve environmental issues in the city of Jerusalem, because the environment doesn't recognize borders or political definitions. We need to look at it from a holistic perspective. But what we did before we brought those activists together, we started with working each side on their own, and each side learning the language of the other. So we had a course of Arabic, spoken Arabic for Israelis, and a course of spoken Hebrew for the Palestinians. And after that stage, in which also we work with the group to allow them to prepare them for meeting the other, then we brought them together and started recognizing the needs and the opportunities that working in the same city, but it's two universes apart, can give us.
So were these the attendees? I mean, often the people that I speak to, Israelis and Palestinians, don't speak to one another. So were these attendees more used to speaking to each other or not? And if not, what was that like when you brought them together?
Yeah, no, not necessarily. We focused on participants that were primarily committed to environmental activism and not to dialogue or peace or human.
What type of environmentalists were they? looking for water, energy? What were
Yeah,
they?
yeah. Each one had their own focus. Some more
Mm,
on water, some more on recycling, some
mm-hmm,
more on climate change crisis.
mm-hmm,
So there were a variety of approaches, and some of them they did have experience of meeting with people from the other side, and some they did not. So for that, it was important, and as a general rule, it is important always to begin with your own identity group where you feel safe, you create a safe
mm-hmm,
space, and you
mm-hmm.
prepare yourself to meet the other.
Right. Did you do any kind of mm, discussions beforehand about uh, what that might be like, or any kind of training like that before they met the other to make it easier on them?
Yes, as part of the first phase that was focused on learning the language of the
Mm,
other, we also conducted conversations, facilitated sessions about what are our expectations from and our fears and our hopes
mhm.
from meeting the other.
And because in general, the Israelis speak Hebrew and the Palestinians speak Arabic, did you conduct the sessions in English? Did you have translators? How did you deal with that?
Well, sometimes we do our work in English. Sometimes we translate to each other. And in this particular project, since we invested in teaching them
Hmm.
the languages, so they use also the second phase, the phase that they were working on on their own ideas of activism, also to practice the
Hmm.
language that they learned. And so.
Yeah. How did that work? Did they have
Uh,
enough knowledge to do that?
Well, there was a lot of goodwill and a lot of trial and error and
Yeah.
help from each other and mutual translation. So it's part of the bringing people together to deal with
Yeah. Yeah,
the
there's
issues.
so many challenges in this situation. Uh, you know,
Yeah.
it's quite a challenge. And then you had this project between Bedouin and Jewish neighbors.
Yes,
What was that like?
that was a project that we did in cooperation with a New Dawn in the Negev NGO,
Uh-huh.
which is a Bedouin Jewish organization based in Rahat,
Mm-hmm.
which is the biggest Bedouin city in the Negev Desert in the south of Israel. So
Right.
so we brought together Bedouin activists from Rahat mostly and Jewish activists from the different kibbutz and towns in the area, mostly from the Bnei Shimon Regional Council, and
Mm-hmm.
uh, and we had a series of meetings and workshops, sometimes as a plenary, sometimes like as we see in this picture, one-on-one,
Mm-hmm.
uh, small groups.
Were there
Uh,
very many women who participated?
yes, in this project we had more women than men actually.
Oh, wow, cool.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
and we had
sometimes that's an issue with
yeah,
depending on what group, what and
yeah.
the cultural differences. Yeah, we interviewed New Dawn in the Negev in March. What was your purpose in working with a New Dawn in the Negev for
Well,
this project?
part of our commitment to promote shared society and to promote better understanding between different groups, both within Israel and between Israelis and Palestinians. And so that was one of the main goals. And from that project, we ended up developing a very strong and deep strategic partnership between challenge and the new dawn that we set a few goals, and it took us 3 years to
Mm.
of very intensive cooperation to reach
Oh,
to that.
wonderful. What types of reactions did you get from the Bedouins and the Jewish population working together? What did they think about it?
Well, people that come to this kind of projects, the people that are most of the time predisposed to
Yeah,
meet there.
right.
So they were very
But I
cooperative.
would imagine
Very,
there are a few surprises.
yes, there's always the some surprises, some realizations that we had our own assumptions that they don't always relate to how the other
Right.
sees the same reality, or how the other looks at us or at
That's for
themselves.
sure. That's for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
We
So,
all live in our own world that we create.
and
Um,
sometimes these surprises are bad, are shaking the way people look at each other. Sometimes they are very good.
yeah, yeah.
In another project that we did together with the New Dawn,
Hmm.
uh, we had a group of elders from
Yeah.
also Bedouins and Jews,
Uh-huh.
and and we did a visit to one of the kibbutz near the Gaza border, and
Uh-huh.
one of the Bedouin ladies, she got very emotional, and she shared with the group that it was the first time in many years that she was so close to Gaza, where she had family that she hadn't seen
Oh,
for long decades. Uh,
right.
so everyone was moved by.
Yes. Do you have any other interesting stories to tell from the people that you worked with? Any realizations, any friendships that came out of it, or
Yes, there are a lot of stories. For example, one of the two of the participants in the project on environment in Jerusalem that I mentioned
hmm
earlier,
hmm
that you see that even the things that we consider so obvious, that are almost transparent for
hmm
us, sometimes
right,
you don't you don't think about them, but
hmm
surprise you. So one
right,
Palestinian participant said, actually, I never thought that on the western side, that it's usually so nicer and more developed, that you have garbage on the street, and that's it surprised her very much
mm,
to see pictures of piles of garbage in different streets that the municipality didn't come to retrieve. And
mm,
on the other hand, one of the Israeli participants, after seeing a picture of uh, an apartment in the eastern side of the city, in the Palestinian side of the city, with all these plants in the balcony. So
hmm
I actually never thought of Palestinians having plants in their homes.
yeah,
So this
yeah,
kind of
there,
organization, it's crucial. It's a very first layer that we need to overcome, of being strange to each other. It's not enough. It's not the goal just to meet the other, just
yeah,
to
yeah,
realize. We need also to after that to work on more more deeper issues, like
yeah,
what the conflict about, and where it touches me, or where it
hmm
bothers you, and so on.
right,
But the first thing that we must do is bring people together to know each other, to
yeah, it's
realize
really
we are humans.
exactly. I can't tell you the number of times with all the different peace organizations I speak with and those that bring Israelis and Palestinians together. It's so sad. They're actually surprised with all the propaganda they listen to discover when they do speak to one another that the other really is human. For us, we don't live with, and at least Americans don't live in this conflict zone with all of this. So it's a foregone conclusion, but there it's a discovery, and it's really sad. I'm real grateful that it's happening, that they are speaking with one another, but the fact that they would ever think anything else is very sad. But anyway, so what is, first of all, we have this Mimuna
Mimuna. Yes.
dinner. What are those two things to begin with? I know they're holidays on both sides, but can you describe each?
Yeah. So, and this goes also to the interfaith aspects that we mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
And so, the iftar dinner is during the holy month of Ramadan for Muslims, that they fast during the day from sunrise to sundown, and they have this big meal at sundown
Mm-hmm.
when in the evening, and usually it's a big celebration for family and friends, and it's called the iftar dinner.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and this, you might know that the Muslim calendar is lunar based, and
Mm-hmm.
the Jewish calendar is both lunar and solar. So the for us the holidays are mostly on the same season.
Mm-hmm.
Passover is always in the spring, and
Mm-hmm.
Sukkot is always in the fall. But in the Muslim calendar, every year the holidays move 11 days.
Mm.
So this year, the month of Ramadan fell in the same period like Pesach, like Passover.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And one of the traditions that developed here in Israel mostly after many years is that in the day after Passover, we adopted a celebration that came from the Northern African, the Moroccan, Tunisian Jewish communities, that during the 8 days of Passover, they didn't touch anything that is wheat
Mm-hmm.
or bread. So the Arab neighbors usually invited them after the Passover ends
Mm.
to a dinner with sweets and breads
Mm.
and a lot of nice food. So it's a celebration of cooperation and tolerance, and it's named Mimuna after Maimonides, after the Rambam.
Mm.
That was one of the biggest Jewish thinkers and philosophers and religious leaders of its time, and he also was very, very well connected to the Muslim community
Mm.
in South Europe and North Africa, and so in honor of Maimonides, it's called Mimuna,
Mm.
and it celebrates the capacity of Jews and Arabs to live together and to cooperate. So this year we seized the opportunity that both celebrations came together in the
Mm.
calendar, and we held a big dinner in the south of Jerusalem
Mm.
as part of a project that of the Path of Hope and Peace initiative, between the Israeli town of Tzuradas and the Palestinian town of Husan. And we invited Israelis and Palestinians, and we invited friends and colleagues from many, many different organizations, not just from our own activists. And we had a very big crowd. It was a very nice event.
Did you have some kind of ceremonies that I've not been to either celebration that represented what each side usually does, or did you just eat, or how did it work?
Yeah, we had some small ceremonies. We didn't make it a religious event.
Right.
It was more of a gathering and a celebration of being together,
And
learning from each other and telling each other about our traditions.
yeah, what kind of foods were served?
Well,
Do you remember?
yes, of course. So the Palestinians friends brought makluba, which is a great dish with rice and vegetables and
Okay, now we're getting
sometimes
me
with
hungry. Okay, and
then from the Israeli side, from the Jewish side, we brought different sweets for dessert, like mufletas and traditional Northern African sweets. So it was a combination also at the level of the menu.
besides full stomachs, did you get any other reactions?
Well, it was not a meeting in order to discuss or to plan or to work.
Yeah,
was
but I mean, was this new to the participants, or just some of them, or?
For some of them it was new, for some of them it was not. But the gathering and getting to know each other and getting to be together, it's sometimes in our reality is a goal in itself. So
Yeah.
it's important in itself. And even if for those that are used to meet the other, just to stop and breathe and have an
and
activity that is
enjoy.
not and enjoy and it's an
And
activity that
relax.
is not focused on how
The
to change
issues.
reality and how
Yeah.
and how to deal with the problems and how to reduce violence and suffering and so on. Just to be together and celebrate that we are all committed to similar goals, and that's also important.
So you did. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very important. So you did this with the Path of Hope and Peace. We've also interviewed them. A great organization. Have you done other projects with them?
Yes, we are doing a lot of work together. Actually, we are joining forces, and we are becoming one organization that.
Wonderful.
So we are trying to create synergy and reduce redundancies.
Well, that'll make dollars go farther, I'm sure.
Yeah, we believe in the power of partnerships. There is this African proverb that I love very much that says, if you want to get fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together.
Yeah. And I think when I spoke with you before, you had shared with me another great expression that really describes a lot of peace work, because you find doing peace work so much of the time you need to be listening instead of speaking. Yes. And that there was the biblical expression of God gave us one mouth and two ears, and you should use really that proportion when you're doing this kind of work.
Yes, and when we live in a situation of a what we call a protracted conflict, a conflict that is going on
Mhm.
so long and it
Right.
seems that to be unsolvable. So,
Yeah.
even the capacity to listen, to really listen, not just to hear, but to listen
Right.
to each other is almost revolutionary.
Yeah. Well, even just talking to your spouse. Many times it's difficult just to listen.
Absolutely. Absolutely, and this is part of the of what we understand from conflict transformation theory, that the dynamic of conflict is has some similarities, some big
Yeah.
similarities.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what the conflict is about or what
Right.
the sides are, but once you enter into a dynamic of a conflict, you have the risk of developing a very negative antagonistic dynamic that starts with blaming and with the
Mhm.
stopping stop listening to each other, stop trying to understand each other, and
Mhm.
uh, making assumptions about the other, and
Right.
instead of really paying attention. So the dynamic is very similar, whether it's between spouses or between nations.
Yeah.
Uh, we need all to breathe and listen and try to understand and realize that understanding is not agreeing.
Right. Right.
There is a difference, and sometimes people are afraid to listen because they assume that if they listen and if they understand the other, that might lead them to necessarily to agree with them. And this is one of the things that we try to teach participants, that the fact that you understand what are the needs of the other, what are the
Hmm.
goals of the other, what are the interests of the other, doesn't mean that you need to agree with them. You can still have a conflict. You can still maintain your own goals and your own actions to fulfill your needs. But once you understand the other and the other understands you better, then the discussion will be at a different level. It will not be based on assumptions, but it will be based on better knowledge.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
search for solutions or the search for formulas will be much more effective.
Yeah. One of the organizations that I've been doing a real deep dive, a 4-part series, is Hands of Peace. And they work with high school students, and they do dialogue as their primary focus in 3-week camps, at least the first year, and then they have successive programs. But these high school students, during the dialogue sessions, it can get quite heated from both sides. They have Jewish Israelis, Palestinian citizens of Israel, Palestinians from the West Bank, and American high school students go to Chicago and to San Diego. And they bring them here and they stay with host families, and they learn so much about one another. But during the dialogue sessions, it can get really rowdy.
Yes.
However, they do so much training uh, with the kids that, or the teens, that when they leave the session, they realize can still be friends.
Yeah.
And they often make lifelong friends. The organization's been around for 20 years, and it's beautiful. It's really, really interesting. But it, there's so much psychology involved in all this, and the kind of work that you do and studying it. It's just, it's, you can't just look at the surface of these entrenched conflicts. It's so much is going on.
Dealing with the symptoms is tempting, but it's not. It will
Yeah.
not provide an answer.
So we have this really interesting picture here. In 2018, you held a panel with two Israeli members of the Knesset, MK Moshe Raz from the Meretz Party and MK Yehuda Glick from the Likud Party, about the question of whether an alternative to the two-state solution might be developed in their eyes. How would you describe the Meretz Party and the Likud Party? What are the differences?
Well, there are many differences logically at all
Mhm.
levels, but in terms of their positions and attitudes towards the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, I would say, going back to what I shared before about different approaches to conflict, that
Mhm.
Meretz is one of the best examples of the conflict resolution
Mm.
approach that
Mhm.
says, let's try to reach a solution, and they are one of the most vocal proponents of the two-state solution, and committed to peace and human rights from their perspective.
Mhm.
And the Likud is perhaps the best example of the conflict management approach, saying we are in a situation of conflict. We cannot right now. We don't see a solution, and because no solution is available, so we need to maintain the status quo. We need to continue protecting our interests and our goals. And if that means from time to time also leading military campaigns or
Mhm.
going to war, so that's what we need to do. And so it's absolutely a realistic approach dealing with reality.
So what was that panel like? Were
Very
you
interesting.
able to maintain decency?
Absolutely. Both Knesset members are very intelligent and very articulated
Yeah,
persons.
yeah,
And they have very different ideas and very
right.
contradictory ways of looking at reality and what they believe should be done, but
Mhm.
cordial conversation in
Who
which
was the
everybody.
audience?
The audience was a combination of people from that came to listen, especially to one or to the other.
Mhm.
There were peace activists,
Mhm.
and there were settlers, and there were
Oy.
Palestinians, and it was a very varied crowd.
And did they have the opportunity to ask questions?
Yes, of course.
And how did that go?
Some of the questions were more interesting. Some were more mini lectures and not
Yeah.
questions themselves, as it usually happens.
Was it
But that's okay.
televised?
No,
No.
we did a video clip of it.
Hmm. And I noticed it said that this was part of the Center for Federal Studies and Initiatives. What was that all about?
That was a project that we did in 4 or 5 years ago, before the COVID pandemic, dealing with the symptoms is again similar to the current project that we have at the Federal
The
Forum.
federal,
It's
yeah.
a slightly different approach, um, and a slightly different combination of partners, but we have been working on alternatives and to different creative ways of looking at the conflict since the beginning of Challenge
Mm-hmm.
between
Okay.
2011 and 2014. We worked on our own understanding of the conflict, and we
Yeah.
developed an approach called national mutual recognition in a common homeland.
Mm.
And we presented it. We were invited to present it in a Harvard University conference
Oh, how cool.
in 2014.
Oh,
And
that was a unique year.
yeah, yes,
That
it
that
was.
uh
And
was
so
that before or after the 50-day conflict?
I don't remember exactly, but
Mm.
We have
Oh,
conflicts
he,
like that
well,
almost every other year, if
oh,
not
yeah,
every
I know,
other
I know.
year. So,
Unfortunately, there's a lot
mm,
of that, but it just happened to, it's always sticks out in my mind because that's what brought me to into all this because I was there
yeah.
during that. But that was in July
Mhm.
when the conflict started, July
Yeah.
4th. But
Yeah.
anyway, it's not important. I hear that year and all things come to mind. But
Mhm.
so this federal forum, what is the basis for all of this? I know that you had all kinds of brainstorming and so on. You mentioned a bit about it, but can you talk more about the ideas behind it? What I mean, I understand you're living with everybody there currently, and the two-state solution seems to be going nowhere. Just a lot of talk through the years, but nothing much. So, how are you moving? Is this your peace plan that you think would work? What is this approach? How do you feel about this approach? Or are you still discovering what everybody thinks?
No, first of all, as I mentioned, we during this initial research that we did ourselves, we came with these two the understanding of these two main obstacles,
Mm-hmm.
and, and that were for us very explain very well why the two-state approach is so difficult to implement.
Right,
It might
right,
not be impossible, but it's very difficult.
right.
And and so we started to ask ourselves whether there might be a better alternative.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, reality evolved in a way that right now the two-state solution is seen as almost unviable, impossible to be implemented. So, but politicians, both in leadership of Israel and the Palestinian Authority and the international community, they are still committed to the two-state ideal. So
Yeah.
there is kind of a vacuum going on between reality and what the leaderships are proposing, because
Mm.
the, they they are committed to something that they know, and they say it out loud that it's not going to happen in the near future. So, and the status quo, which is the result, it's also very problematic and very violent, as we see these days, even today and yesterday, and these last few months, we
Mm-hmm.
are in escalation of violence over here.
Yeah, I know.
And so we we realize that the role of civil society and the role of the scholars in the universities is to try to develop alternatives to fill
Mm-hmm.
that vacuum.
Mm-hmm.
And perhaps if we manage to develop something that is good enough or interesting enough, politicians will come and join us at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And we realized also that we were not the only ones thinking along these lines. There were
Mm.
a few other groups and a few other organizations also trying to develop each their own idea of a federation or a
Mm-hmm.
confederation or some kind of creative hybrid of
Right,
model. So the
right.
first thing that we did, even during the COVID, was to invite all of them to come and sit together and start talking with each other and try
Mm-hmm.
to check whether we can create
Mm-hmm.
synergy among us.
Mm-hmm.
And from there we start to analyze and understand that even if everyone has their own specific model that they would love to see, uh,
Mm-hmm.
there are so many similarities
Mm-hmm.
that there is a lot of potential for cooperation between them, and it doesn't make
Great.
sense for them to compete between each other. So in this picture, we are using one of the tools that we brought from Challenge from our own toolkit,
Mhm.
tool of creating consensus around practical visions and understanding obstacles along the
Mhm.
way. And so it's a participatory process. So each of this was a meeting of the core group of the Federal Forum,
Mhm.
and each of them wrote on the different pieces of paper their own ideas, and then we started gathering them together and bringing them together into categories, and to see
Mhm.
whether we can create a shared vision of what needs to be done and what might prevent us from doing it.
And what was the bottom line? Did you come to some kind of agreement?
Well, we came to a series of understandings. For example, that we need to pay attention to issue of the fear of losing the self-determination of the identity on the
Mm.
Israeli side. We struggled for so long to have our own state and our own safe place. So
Mhm.
moving too fast into a different model might be very scary and very problematic, even if there is a possibility of peace. That
What did they say about, because I always hear that because of the Palestinian population increasing at such a fast rate, that there's always the fear that they would be the majority quickly instead of the Jewish. How do you deal with that, or do you not have a solution yet for that?
well, that's one of the main reasons why we are looking at federal systems. Federal systems like the United States, you have a joint government at the top, the federal level, and then you have the individual states like New York or California, Texas, and so on. And each of those states can have their own uniqueness. They have their own flag, their own culture, their own decisions on education or on different levels of autonomy. For example, you have the French-speaking province that
Mm-hmm.
has their own culture and their own language, and is part of Canada, and they cooperate with the English speaking part of the country, or Belgium with the Walloons and Flemish and so on.
So is the thought that each of the states, for instance, would be identify as this one would be Palestinian, this one would be Jewish, Israeli, etc., all over,
Yeah,
and
but,
then but overall have uh, the federal government.
yeah. So most of the models that we are developing and that the participants are developing are based on that premise that the self-determination will be mostly uh, implemented and protected at the regional level, whether you call it state or canton or province or whatever name we will agree on. And there will be
I'm sure a few other names will come along.
absolutely,
Maybe not so nice at times.
absolutely, and some of those regions will be predominantly Jewish
Mhm.
or Israeli. Some of those will be predominantly Palestinian, and some will be mixed.
Mhm.
So different models have different proposals of how many regions and how they will be divided. But the whole idea, one of the benefits of looking at it from a federal perspective, is that it allows the double gain of having a regional self-determination with a federal government in which you can have a 50-50 cooperation or a constitutional arrangement with checks and balances that reduce the fear of demographic, what we call the demographic threat or the demographic bomb. It's kind of a transcending solution.
Very interesting, very interesting. But I didn't want to leave without asking you at least a couple personal questions. I think it's important to understand what makes these various peace activists. So, what made you want to work on peace?
Well, I was infected, quote unquote, with this bug of trying to make the world a better place,
Yeah.
of tikkun olam, as we say.
Yeah.
Since I was very young in Argentina, even before I made Aliyah. I grew up during the 1980s when in Argentina was the military regime, the military junta, and in 1982, when they thought that the government might be weakening, they decided to get the people to rally against an external enemy, and they declared war on Great Britain for the Falklands Islands, or the Malvinas, as they are called in Argentina. And this is when the first time I understood the power of politics and of mass manipulation by leaders. And at the same time, there was a big human rights movement growing and becoming bigger and more influential in Argentina, in the Argentinian society, and demanding a return to democracy and to civil rule. And so this is when I became socially and politically aware, and I decided I wanted to.
How old were you?
15.
Holy moly! Okay.
Yeah, and so this is what brought me into the field of social and political activism. And in parallel, I grew up in a very Jewish family, active part of the Jewish community in Argentina. So I always felt very committed to my Jewish identity and to my Zionist identity.
When did you make Aliyah?
In 1996. So I decided to, the last trigger that prompted my Aliyah was the fact that I wanted to study political science, and during the military rule in Argentina until 1983, there was political science was forbidden. The public universities didn't teach political science. So when I finished my high school in 1984, I studied 1 year in a private university that started the program on political science. And I was very not satisfied with the level of the studies there. So I said, okay, this is my opportunity to make Aliyah and come and study political science at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem with people that experts in the field.
Yeah, and then because you were living there, or because you always were interested in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict? What?
I was interested in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. I was interested in the Israeli and Jewish identity and the different religious and secular sub-identities or dynamics. I was an activist in the conservative movement in Argentina. and so the whole package was very important for me, and still is.
Great. For your last question, what's your next steps for challenge? What are you trying to achieve next?
Well, we are now in a process of growing, and we are making us ready for going up a very big step and of growth and of creating new partnerships and new synergy. We want to work with as many groups and individuals and organizations as possible, and learn from each other and contribute our own. And we are being asked also to participate and to provide trainings and to provide courses and to do cooperative work with different organizations. So right now what we need is the capacity of working together, and everyone that wants to partner up and support us and help us, we will be very glad to add them to our family.
Wonderful. Terrific. Well, thanks so much, Mario, for giving us your time today and for the inspiring and creative work that you do and have done for years in helping Israelis and Palestinians to work together on peace. Next week, we'll be speaking with Natalie Sopinski of Rescuers Without Borders, an Israeli volunteer organization with a network of over 1,600 medics, paramedics, and doctors who are committed to saving lives. They most often are first to get to the scene of terrorist attacks and other medical emergencies where the differences of a few minutes often mean saving someone's life. They've held hundreds of emergency simulation drills and trained medical teams not only in Israel but all around the world. More than 6,000 people have been trained by the organization, and today Rescuers Without Borders has medical teams in 14 countries in the world. We hope you'll join Peace with Penny, and for now, we'll leave you as we pray that everyone will someday live in peace, shalom, and salam.